Hello, everybody. Um, Welcome to the lesson on one-step equations. My name is Scott. I'm going to be a teacher today. And before we get started, just kind of let you know a little bit about myself. I raise chickens. I have a lot of pets in my house, and I kind of have too many chickens right now. But a friend of mine owns goats, and we've decided we'd like to make a trade, a nice fair trade. And so what we figured out is that if I was to give her 3 chickens, that would be equivalent to her giving me 2 goats. Right? So now I can have some chickens and I can have some goats, and she can have some chickens and some goats. We want to make sure it was a fair trade, right? So the value of 3 chickens is equal to the value of 2 goats, right? So we're going to bring them to each other. But here's one problem. We live about 20 miles away. All right, so I can't walk my chickens all the way there. All right, so I'm going to bring them in a wagon. Right? I could put my 3 chickens in this wagon. But unfortunately, we no longer have a fair deal because I would be giving my friend 3 chickens and a wagon. And that's not very fair because we already figured out that 3 chickens and 2 goats are equal. But to make this equal, if she transports her 2 goats in a wagon and gives me her wagon, right, we still have an equal value and we can still trade them. Right? This is really the concept we're going to be talking about today, where as long as we keep things equal, we can essentially do anything because the values will stay the same. So we can just trade our wagons and we have exactly the same thing. This is known as the golden rule of algebra. And this is what we'll be talking about for most of this lesson today. When applying the golden rule of algebra, we really have 4 different types of rules that we're going to use with the golden rule of algebra. And then we'll talk about one bonus rule as well. Right? So the first one is to solve equations, right? Our goal is to solve equations using the subtraction property of equality. Next, we'll talk about solving equations using the addition property of equality. Then we'll talk about solving equations using the division property of equality. And 5, solve equations using the multiplication property of equality. Now, I like to use this method called the river method. And the river method is, I want you to visualize that there's this river, right? And the river, the water flows down this river because both banks are equal, right? They both are at the same height on both sides, right? So we go either way. So if we want to cross the river, we want to show that those are equal to each other, we build a bridge, right? And this bridge is our equal sign, right? Showing that either side you go to, it's going to be the same. Right? But what happens if I want to raise the bridge? I want to change the bridge on one side. So I'm going to build a brick wall on one side to some height, right? I'm going to bring it up to some height. And I put my bridge on it. Well, I'm no longer balanced, right? My bridge is offset. And I don't have equal sides. So if the water was to rise, it's all going to flow off to one side. All right, so what we need to do is we need to add an equal value. Now, that doesn't mean that that value has to look the same way, right? I could put some boulders, right? And as long as those boulders are the same height as that brick wall, I'm able to add that to the other side, right? So it may look a little different, but as long as it's the same value, I can add it to both sides. And now I have a balanced bridge. So what does this really mean, right? Well, when we're solving an equation, right? First of all, what does it mean to solve, right? So to solve means to find a value, find a value that makes the statement true. Now, you're going to find all through algebra that you learn all different methods to making this, to find this value, right? So we're going to learn the different methods, but they all are trying to find the same thing, and that's to make the statement true, right? So say I have something that says, x plus 5 equals 6, right? So we're looking for a value that would make the statement true. So what does x stand for, right? X is a variable. It means that unknown, some value, right? Well, if, we don't always write this, but if x equals 1, then that statement would be true. Now, I think most of us can kind of look at this and say, yeah, that makes sense, right? But how do we do this, right? And how do we continue to expand upon this with these really complex equations, right? So first we want to do this thing called the river method, right? So looking at the example, x plus 8 equals 17. If I have this equation, some number plus 8 equals 17, I want to find out what value I could plug in for x to make the statement true, right? So step one is I want to draw a river. Draw your river right through your equal sign, right? Because your river goes underneath your bridge. Right? And then I want to look at what am I doing to the x? Well, I'm right now adding 8 to the x, right? Well, to solve, I want to get this x by itself. What does x equal? Right? So if I'm adding x, I want to undo this. And so I am going to subtract 8, right? So if I take a number, I add 8 to it, and then I take the 8 away, right? I'm going to be left with that number. But what did we just learn about the golden rule of algebra, right? We need to, what we do to one side of the river, we have to do to the other to keep it balanced, right? So I'm going to subtract 8 from the other side as well, right? So both banks, I'm going to pull both down by the same amount. Well, if I have an x value, I have some value, I add 8 to it, and then I subtract 8, I'm going to be left with just x. If I still have a bridge, right, because it's still equal. If I have 17 and then I subtract 8 from it, I am left with 9. What this statement tells me is this is true when x equals 9. That's what it tells me. But we need to find out first, right? So let's check. Right? And I'll tell you the best thing about algebra, unlike any other subject, we almost always can check to see if we got our answer right. Right? And you submit a paper in English, you don't necessarily know until the teacher gives it back to you. All right, so how do we check it? Well, by checking, we're going to substitute. Right? So substituting, right? I'm just going to take this value and substitute it for x. Why can I do that? Well, x and 9, it says right there that they're equal. So I can do that. Right? So let's check. 9 plus 8 equals 17. Well, 17 equals 17. It is correct. We found our solution.